Hey friends, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Duns. Today we read 2 Samuel chapter 19. Let's get started.
Okay, so in this chapter, this is basically the story of David's return to Jerusalem. And Warren Wiersbe said years ago, he said that a crisis brings out the best in some people and the worst in other people. And this is never more true than when you're following David on this journey back to Jerusalem. So he's been in the wilderness, because remember, David's sin stirred up adversity within his own house. That was the promise. David had to cross the Jordan River, go back out into the wilderness, and really there was civil war between David and his son. In the back of our minds, we understand that this is like a reverse Exodus. So rather than coming into the promised land across the Jordan as God had intended, now David is exiting the promised land, going back to the wilderness. And what took him there? His sin did. So on his journey back home, all of these people begin showing back up, which over the last several chapters had either been good to David or evil to David or mean to David or had gone with David. And so now all of these guys are playing into this. So David has had a victory in battle. His enemy, which was also his son, is dead. David is sad about this, obviously. And that kind of really is communicating the wrong message to his followers about who he was really for and against and all this story.
The plan was to win,
Yeah,
right?
The plan was to win, but David counts it as a loss. So this is a victory, but for David, this is a bitter victory. And I'm telling you, I don't think we can fully understand this, because in our mind, we just go, well, he won, and now he gets to go back home. But this is still his child. Right. And so even though his child was a rebel, the Bible has great precedence of a father who loves his prodigal rebel children. Okay, so he's meeting all these people as he's coming back. What'd you get from all this?
I think this chapter furthers that idea that life is complicated. Like these feelings and emotions, even, I'm sure he counted this as a victory, but you can't separate that relationship. You can't separate the feelings you feel. Something that really stood out to me was that David, now you see all these relationships come up. It's been complicated. It's been messy. Things have happened. People have swapped sides. He sent people to the other side. People have been ugly to each other. And so now we see some reconciliation. We see also, like, if the guy I thought who wasn't going to be king and I was siding with the guy who was king, I'd be trying to make up with the new king if my guy was killed in battle too. But what I see here is that followers of the way have to forgive, and not just this arbitrary, super easy idea of, yep, I forgive them, check it off, but forgive them enough to do life with them. He has to forgive these people who have mistreated him, maybe in the most difficult time, were ugly to him, hurt his feelings, rubbed sand in the wound, and now he's choosing to forgive them and do life with them. Forgiveness is like, it's not a one-time thing, and in my own life I've really experienced this. It's a continual thing. You can forgive the act, but then you're going to have to continue to forgive, and you may have to keep forgiving that act, but also feelings arise and you have to deal with that as it comes up, like, ooh, maybe there's a little more in my heart that I need to work on. And so this is definitely a process, but the Bible is clear. God's people, followers of the way, are to forgive their enemies.
Yeah. I think that the Bible overall has a lot to say about how we treat our enemies. There's a couple of these interactions that really stick out to me. The one that I want to look at first is Mephibosheth. So Mephibosheth was Jonathan's son. David basically adopted him, made him part of his own family. And then his servant comes along and says that actually Mephibosheth was plotting on him. Now Mephibosheth's coming back going, no, I wasn't plotting on you. And David said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take all of what you guys are arguing about. We just cut it down the middle. You take half, and go on. If you remember, in your Bible, there's a great story that Solomon, David's son, has later about two women arguing over a baby. Which one is the baby? Which one is the actual mother of the baby? And Solomon said, hey, bring me a sword. He said, I'm going to cut the baby in half, which is gruesome. He said, I'm going to give half to you and half to you. And one mama says, well, that's fair. And the other goes, no, leave the baby alone and just give it to her. Just let the baby live. And Solomon said, that's your baby, because that's how a mama reacts.
Mm-hmm.
David, in talking with Mephibosheth, David said, look, just split this property down the middle. I'm tired of you guys fighting about it. I don't know who to believe. And old Mephibosheth says, no, just let him have it. I'm just happy you're back. I'm telling you, I'm inclined to believe Mephibosheth in the way Solomon was inclined to believe this mother of this baby. The other thing is, there's a guy in this story, and his name is Shimei. When David was leaving Jerusalem, Shimei cussed David for everything he was worth. I'm talking about, it was bad. And David's coming back with an army, and he's coming back as king. So guess what he could have done? He could have said, hey, you gone. Okay, listen, by the way, look in verse number 20. It says this. This is what Shimei, he's now eating crow in front of David. He says, for I, your servant, know that I have sinned. Therefore I am here, the first to come to you of all the house of Joseph, to go down to meet my lord the king. So listen, this situation is the dream of everybody who's ever been wronged by somebody else. That they would come groveling back, telling us how sorry they are and how wrong they are, how great we are and how they were the ones that fall. That is the inner dream of anybody who's ever been wronged. And yet what we have here is we have David who, I want to say, look, it takes a lot of maturity not to act in revenge. Most of us in our lives are going to, at some point or another, have a Shimei. We're going to have an enemy, somebody who has hurt us, somebody who has kicked us while we're down on a terrible time. And we have to remember what God says about how we treat our enemies. And so what we have to remember is there's a lot of good that can come out of having a Shimei in our life. Somebody that's been terrible to us, but that's like sandpaper to our soul, to smooth out the edges that we didn't even know were rough in the first place. There's a lot of lessons that a Shimei can teach us about how God is enough even when our enemies don't come crawling back. God is enough. And that I don't have to carry bitterness toward my enemies. I can acknowledge and move on. You say, I can't do that. No. You can't. But God can. This is a story about he got it right on this day. By the way, I don't think David gets this right forever, because it does come back to haunt this guy later. But on this day, I want to tell you, David was gracious to this guy. He gave him much better than he deserved. And again, we get to see a glimpse of our king, who looks at those of us who have done him wrong and says, no, you get to live. Keep reading. We'll be in chapter number 20 tomorrow, and David's got to put down another rebellion. And so we'll see you then. All right. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.